And thanks to the wonders of technology since I got kicked out. I don't think that's indicative of what I'm talking about tonight, but I guess we'll find out. So again, sorry about that. So we are going to talk a little bit about the projects that we have underway, the projects we're talking about for the future, and then also the issues of safety and equity, which are very important for all of us within Cook County and particularly within the district. So the first thing is a couple housekeeping, and God willing, I will not be kicked out again. Please remain muted for the duration of the conversation. Thanks to everybody who submitted questions ahead of time. We're going to answer those as best we can during the next hour. Also, if you have questions during the course of this presentation, please put them in the chat and we'll try to get to them. If the time is not sufficient to answer all your questions, make sure you put them in the chat anyway, because my staff, Liz, Julie, and Barb will respond to your questions offline, even if after 7:30 when we're done. The meeting is being recorded and will be sent to all the attendees once the event is concluded. And it'll also be streamed on my Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Commissioner Britton, if you're interested in viewing and sharing the contents of this with your friends and family. Now, if everybody would humor me for a second, because it doesn't exist unless we take a picture. I want to take a virtual picture of everybody who's attending, so just give us 1 second. My staff will take a quick photograph and then we'll get on with the program. And Liz, you're muted, but you're good. Okay, good. If you'll indulge me for just 1 second, I want to talk a little bit about what's been going on the last 3 years I've been in office. And I certainly understand how difficult everything has been for all of us during COVID. But what I think has been really important for us, and I hope I've said this before, but I hope we really are at the end of this COVID crisis. But we were able to do a lot with masking, testing, and vaccinations in the 14th district. And I had a lot of help from some of the people who were on this call tonight. We worked to partner with our state reps and state senators in the Flick Park testing site, vaccination clinics at New Trier, and at 45 mobile vaccination sites. We've also given away 1,000 cloth masks and 1,000 KN95 masks throughout the townships and 14th district communities. I've also tried to champion as best I can the Cook County Community Recovery Initiative, which has provided $2.5 million in grants, advice, and technical assistance to over 300 small businesses in the 14th district. And hundreds of the 14th district residents have received emergency assistance, including rental assistance and direct cash assistance during this crisis. I continue to try to listen as much as I can and host community events so that we can discuss the issues that are important to the constituents of the 14th. As we move through this recovery, which I really hope is the final stage of this whole process, I'll continue to advocate for the amount of money that we receive from the American Rescue Plan, that a fair amount goes to the 14th district and the needs that we have here in our neighborhoods. So as it relates to today's program, I'm proud to share that roughly $30.5 million is to be allocated to transportation initiatives, including electric charging stations, expansion of Invest in Cook, which is the program that's been around for quite a few years to provide local municipalities and
recording in progress.
And please mute yourself if you would, if you're not talking. And we've also worked on quite a bit of stormwater management throughout Cook County to excessive flooding. So what we're going to discuss today is really about infrastructure and roads and bridges and highways, stormwater, bike trails, sidewalks, and appropriately for our new world and the green initiatives that have been brought forward, vehicle charger stations. It's important to keep in mind that we're connecting residents in both work and education so that they can still do shopping, go to restaurants, and to keep equity and access to the forefront of everything we do. Through current and future investments in equitable and safe transportation, we're building Cook County in a better connected system with opportunity for everyone, and that'll pave the way for our collective future. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce the head of the Department of Transportation and Highways, Superintendent Jennifer Siskillen, and Assistant Superintendent Nathan Roseberry. Superintendent Killen is the first female superintendent in the 108-year history of the department, and she brings more than 20 years of experience to her position and has been with the Department of Transportation and Highways in the county for 10 years. Nate is the Department of Transportation and Highways Assistant Superintendent. Prior to being with Cook County, he was in the highway section, leading the Chicago Department of Transportation, responsible for reconstruction, resurfacing traffic signals, and transportation improvements for 1,000 miles of arterial roadways in the city. Thanks to both of you for taking out your time and your evening, which is not part of your job description, for being here with us today. So I'm going to start off with some of the questions that have been pre-submitted to my staff, and we'll talk a little bit about what answers we can give to the folks who are on this call. First off, Sis, if you wouldn't mind, can you just give us an indication as to what the Department of Transportation and Highways does and what it maintains?
Absolutely. And thank you again, Commissioner, for hosting both Nate and I tonight. Pleasure to be with you this evening. Now, the Department of Transportation and Highways, we have what we call jurisdictional authority. So that means that we are responsible for the planning, design, construction, and maintenance of over 1,600 miles of roadway throughout Cook County. We also have maintenance and jurisdiction on 130 bridges, 365 traffic signals, and 7 pumping stations. And we maintain these assets with 4 maintenance districts that are spread across Cook County. We say, okay, that's great. You know, what are the numbers? That's wonderful. But really what it's about is that under Madam President's leadership and that of Commissioner Britton, you know, we're really going beyond transportation. So it's going beyond those numbers that I just spoke of, because collectively all of that accounts just for 5% of the roadways within the county. And we want to make sure that if it's in the county, if it's a local road, if it's a state road, which we'll talk about a little bit later, you know, how we can continue to bring resources to making sure mobility works for everybody.
That sounds great. And you know, this is one thing, and I admit I've been in office for 3 years, but I still don't know every road and bridge that's in the county as opposed to the city, as opposed to the unincorporated areas, opposed to the state. So if you wanted to find out if something's in the county, how do you do that?
So we actually have a website, and we're going to put the link up here in the chat for you, but it's called Cook Viewer. So, you know, as a resident, it's like, does it matter whose road it is? Well, from a maintenance perspective, there's an issue, it would. So as you click on the link that is found here, if you just go to Cook County website and type in transportation and highway jurisdiction, it will take you there. But here's the link. You will see a list of lines, you know, red, green, gray, and it'll actually let you know whose roadway it is, and also some contact numbers for who you can call if there is an issue. It will convey state ownership, which on our system will show up as green. Red, which would be a county route. The grayed out routes are those that are typically maintained by our local municipalities and partners within the unincorporated areas.
And in the event that you have a pothole in a county road, or a sign is knocked down, or there's some other issue, first off, you're always welcome to contact my office, which would be happy to help. But if they wanted to contact DOTH directly, how would they reach out to you?
So we have a 24-hour hotline that residents can call, and that number is 312-603-1530. And if it is an urgent maintenance issue, it will actually be dispatched to one of our districts where members of the supervisory team will be called out to respond to that issue. We also have a link on our website that you can use to report problems, and that's at cookcountyil.gov. /agency/maintenance. We're going to put that up here in the chat where you can go ahead and report your problem. We work very well with the commissioner's office. So working with Barb and the team, if there's an issue that comes in, they're very quick in getting hold of us, and then we can dispatch the necessary resources to address that need.
That's great. So 312-603-1530, I know, is the 24-hour number, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So if in an emergency, obviously, please contact us. So I guess for about 6 years in a row, the Cook County Department of Highways and Transportation and Highways has been increasingly active in supporting and partnering with municipalities to build and maintain a comprehensive transportation network for now the 21st century. Can you talk us through the department's Invest in Cook program specifically, and what highlights of past investments in the district that we represent, 14th, have happened, and what's the future of the program?
I am very happy to take that question. So as we spoke of, you know, jurisdictional responsibility, what is county ownership and what's not? You know, Invest in Cook was actually created 6 years ago so that we could address mobility needs across the county, across jurisdictions within the district. And it is an annual $8.5 million grant program. And our call for projects is currently open right now. I do see a few of our municipal partners on the line. So just a reminder, that deadline is March 16th at 5 p.m. But what this program does is it allows all of the communities within Cook County and our unincorporated areas to submit their priority transportation projects to the department for consideration for funding. We are looking at projects across all modes, and that means that we're looking at roadway projects, we're looking at bridge projects, we're looking at those that promote pedestrian accessibility and walkability, bicycle projects, those that support freight. And that would mean, a local roadway there where a local community really bears the brunt of that burden right on their shoulders with perhaps heavy truck traffic, and those roadway facilities need an upgrade. We're also working on projects that can help support transit, so that the PACE buses can operate more efficiently on our roadways. We're looking for opportunities to install bus shelters. We're looking for first mile, last mile connections to transit stations, because what we recognize is that jumping in a car and going to your destination, one, is not a given for everyone. For some, it's a choice. For some, transit is a requirement. For others, it's options. So we really want to ensure here at the county that we're really being broad in how we're looking at projects and being what we call multimodal. That's the industry buzzword, taking into account all forms of transportation. But Invest in Cook was hatched really so that we could advance those critical transportation projects that are not on our network, those we are not responsible for, and that you don't see come up in our capital program. Residents and businesses should not have to worry about whose jurisdiction it is. They just need to make sure our transportation resources can work for them. So the goal of our program is to provide seed money, meaning match dollars to funding that might be coming to a municipality, city, or village or township through the state, perhaps through the federal government, that we are able to provide that local match money for, or for projects that just can't get off the ground otherwise. Sometimes all it takes is $200,000 or $300,000, which, don't get me wrong, folks, that is still a lot of money. But when we're talking about $200,000 or $300,000 that'll allow a $2 or $3 million project to get up and off the ground, that's what we want to do. We want to facilitate connections. And we've had quite a bit of success with this program in the district. Some of the projects that we've been able to award our intersection improvements within the village of Arlington Heights. We were able to provide construction funding for a bicycle and pedestrian project at the intersection of Wilkie Road and Lake Cook Road. We've also provided funding for the village of Wilmette so that they could advance the bicycle network that's part of the Skokie Valley Trail. We're actually going to see that, I think, is a repeat theme, as we continue working through Invest in Cook in our program to see how the county can partner with its local municipalities to make regional trail connections and not leave gaps in the system. Village of Buffalo Grove has also received funding to initiate studies along Lake Cook Road, which is actually directly adjacent to one of our major construction projects that, not to worry, is going to be wrapping up this year. We'll be out of your hair soon enough. And, working on intersection improvements in Glenview. These are just a few of the projects. And as you can see, we're really looking at all forms of transportation. We're funding early studies that help position these projects for future funding. We're also jumping in and partnering with local communities to get those projects, through that final phase into construction to really be of service to the residents.
That's great. And I know that my office has been coordinating with you on all of these things and our local municipal partners as well. The county has been active in funding and collaborating across jurisdictional boundaries. We even deal with Lake County occasionally on all modes of transportation. But what else has the department been working on? And I know you just referenced like the bike plan, but what else is the Department of Transportation and Highways doing beyond the traditional focus on roads and bridges?
So we've actually broadened that focus, and thank you, Commissioner, that we're looking at bike infrastructure. We're looking at transit infrastructure. We're looking at freight infrastructure and say, well, how do we get to this point? Rewinding back to 2016, we actually had put forth a long-range transportation plan that defined these policy priorities. And it wasn't a list of projects. It was policies to help guide investments so that we could be, sensitive to the current situations within the county and understand how we could best apply our resources really in a strategic way. So with that, we've actually completed a freight plan that looked countywide at critical freight corridors. We're looking at things like improving truck routes or improving routes to better handle trucks, where we need to also make provision for buses. We also need to make provisions for pedestrians that are using critical corridors. We're looking at opportunities for grade separations, where we might take the roadway beneath or above the railroad, to eliminate the delays that are caused by gate downtime. One thing we recognize in this region, we are the freight hub of the nation. We're also the bottleneck of the nation for freight operations. And I know many of us experience that in our communities when the gates are down, and it's always as we're running late for an appointment or trying to make our way to work. You know, Cook County is looking for opportunities to partner with the Class 1 railroads in our region and with the state of Illinois. You know, City of Chicago is also a partner for some of our city-focused projects to eliminate some of those constraints when it comes to navigating our network. We are also in the process of completing 2 really exciting plans. These are the first of its kind for Cook County as we break into different modes of transportation. One is our bike plan, and the other one is a countywide transit plan, where again, we're trying to create, you know, a policy framework to help guide our investments. You know, I'd like to turn it over to Nate just to give a higher level description of what we're doing on the bike plan and the transit plan, and when those plans can be ready for publishing.
Oh, appreciate it, Sis. And Commissioner, really appreciate the chance to be here tonight to talk about all the exciting work in Cook County and in your district. Really excited about the 2 plans we're embarking on right now. I think Sis has kind of highlighted that, where we really see our role as really going beyond, you know, the lane miles that we maintain. Really thinking, where do we position ourselves? How does Cook County fit in when we're trying to advance, you know, opportunities for people walking, people biking, people taking transit? Because, you know, as Sis mentioned, sometimes it's an option, other times it's a requirement, and really making sure it's safe and comfortable wherever people go. And so from a biking perspective, I think one of the things we see ourselves as a county government is really, you know, first of all, relying on our sister agency with the Forest Reserve as kind of the backbone of, you know, those high quality, high comfort facilities, you know, those places that people want to take their family bike rides. How can we connect those together to provide a connected network for something, we like to use the term all ages and abilities, you know, really trying to figure out where is that network of corridors where, you know, you can take your family and go on that bike ride, connect through, you know, get to the grocery store, do those trips. So that's one area of focus. We're also looking to figure out where we fit in. You know, some of the times it's looking at improvements on our corridors. So doing that planning exercise to figure out if we do have a project coming up on one of our corridors, should we look at the scope and maybe, you know, maybe start investigating, can we work with a local partner to implement a bike path with our project? And where are those other corridors where it may be like on a different jurisdiction? We talked about the quilt network of different jurisdictions we have in Cook County, you know, knowing where these corridors are. So, you know, Sis and I can work with the Illinois Department of Transportation, the City of Chicago, our municipal partners, and really identify the way where we can have a strategic approach to work together. So that the bike plan is underway. We've had a series of engagements to date. We do have a few more coming up in the near future, and we're hoping to wrap up the bike plan middle of this year, so right around the summer this year. We're also working on a transit plan, and similarly, you know, really trying to make sure we're defining Cook County Department of Transportation and Highways' role when it comes to transit. You know, we don't operate buses, we don't operate trains, we don't need to. We have other agencies that are fully capable, and we want to make sure we're positioning ourselves to support them. And so how does that work? You know, I think we're viewing it very similarly to our role with a lot of other things. You know, looking at our corridor specifically, are there any infrastructure improvements we could make? Sis mentioned with Invest in Cook, looking at like bus shelters, first mile, last mile. I think there's a lot of times where a little bit of infrastructure can really go a long way and really take a commute that someone maybe couldn't take and now can take. Now maybe transit's an option. Also looking at opportunities where we can actually help with funding, you know, funding our transit partners. We have a great program right now within Fair Transit in South Cook. You know, we're doing that as a pilot study. You know, maybe that's an opportunity for us to expand that further into the county. We're investigating it now, seeing if that's an option with this plan, and just looking at other strategies where how we can position ourselves to have that framework, so then we can really have the game plan so future Cook County projects, future Invest in Cook programs can really help to implement and build towards that larger goal.
That all sounds great. Thank you, Nate. Yeah. And again, you know, a lot of this is, you know, people talk about what we're doing from an environmental standpoint and our carbon footprint. I mean, all of this does kind of dovetail nicely with what we're trying to do from a sustainability standpoint and also from just a general environmental standpoint, and using bikes is a big part of that. So, so if residents are kind of curious as to what's going to happen in the future and which road is going to be torn up, how are they going to figure that stuff out, Sis?
So we actually publish an annual plan. So we call it our 5-year capital plan. It's a requirement that we have from the state of Illinois that annually we need to refresh that. You know, we understand that projects may come in and out of our program. We want to make sure that we're being inclusive to those projects who are receiving Invest in Cook grant dollars. We want to make sure we're updating it for projects where grant opportunities may have come on the horizon that we've been able to pivot our program. So that's why we complete an annual program. So there is a link that we have just put up in the chat. Thank you very much, where you can find our annual capital plan. It's a higher level executive document that can speak to some of the accomplishments and the upcoming projects for the season. Or for the next 5 seasons actually, but it'll also talk to the revenues and expenses that we have. How are we funding projects? Who are we collaborating with? You know, more importantly, when are you going to be impacting my roadway? You know, if we initiate a project, you know, many times infrastructure projects do take several years to come to fruition. There are some, you know, smaller scale, smaller scoped projects that we might be able to get from soup to nuts, you know, start to finish, you know, within, you know, 2 to 3 years. Some of our larger infrastructure projects, especially those that we are trying to leverage our local funds for. So as I had mentioned with Invest in Cook, you know, we don't want to take the dollar to be the dollar. What we really strive for is, you know, collaborating and everyone bringing, you know, a quarter to the table. And as we each bring a quarter, we're going to get to $1 or look for those 50-50 opportunities, both at the state level and at the federal level, because what we do know is that the needs are great. The dollars, while they have increased over time with, you know, capital bill investments and now, you know, investments at the federal level, that's what we do. We keep this program up to date. So it's an annual release. We're actually going to be getting ready to release our 2022 to 2026. So covering the next 5-year period. We're looking to do that in about a month's time. We have tables at the back of this document where you can actually look it up, you know, by community, look for all the projects that are in the 14th district. You'll know, you know, what type of project it is. Are we just resurfacing something? If we say it's a rehabilitation, it's a little more robust and a little more in depth. Or if we're going to reconstruct something, and that level of increasing scope typically corresponds with an increased duration in construction activities. But we try to map those out for several reasons. One, to make sure that our municipal partners have a little foresight as to when we're planning out these projects and we'll be coming to engage with them on the projects. We don't do anything in a bottle. We're very transparent about, you know, where we're going, who we're working with. And then we also provide the project cost, just so you can see how your county dollars are working for you.
That sounds great. And I know that we're certainly, you know, it's a 24/7, 365 job. And I know that there are currently a number of projects that are underway in the 14th. Can you just give our listeners an idea of some of the projects that are ongoing right now?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. Happy to. One that I'm very excited about, as I know you are, you know, is the conclusion of Lake Cook Road, which is going to be coming to fruition this year. This has been a multi-season construction project. It's also on our most heavily traveled road in our entire Cook County network, right there on the border of Cook County and Lake County, in the villages of Buffalo Grove and Wheeling. You know, this is a fantastic collaborative project that when we're coming in to do a project, we want to make sure that it's inclusive of all of the needs. Coming in to address X when the community needs are X, Y, and Z. You know, that's why we really take the time to thoughtfully go through these projects. So that was an expansion project, is what we call adding lanes, reconstructing bridges, putting in new traffic signals to help the traffic flow in that congested area move more efficiently and, more importantly, move safely. We've also included pedestrian and bike facilities. That's something that you're going to see on each project that the county puts out. We are very serious about inclusive mobility and making sure that we're providing that infrastructure on every project that we do. Other exciting projects that are happening in the district is the expansion of the Skokie Valley Trail. We've got a robust network just south of the 14th district. We've been working with Wilmette, with Northfield, with Northbrook on the completion of design plans to advance those trail connections that ultimately will connect in miles of trail network to the north of us with our neighbor at Lake County, and ultimately connecting into, you know, the rich bike network that we have coming through the forest preserves and ultimately through the city of Chicago. This was a partnership where we're working with Lake County on the Ped Bridge. So not only are we working on the individual bike path systems within these communities, but we recognize that you have to cross Lake Cook Road. And I've already mentioned that's our most heavily traveled facility, and as Nate alluded, you know, we want to make sure that we're creating comfortable, safe spaces and inclusive mobility for all. So we've partnered with Lake County to build that bridge over Lake Cook Road. and bring that project to completion in the next few years. We're actually nearing the end of design right now, so that will be moving into construction probably sometime next year. And we're also going to be embarking on some bridge removal and replacement projects. So in addition to making sure that our roadways are in a good state of repair and bike and infrastructure, we're looking at replacing the Lehigh Avenue Bridge over East Lake Avenue, the East Lake Avenue Bridge over the middle fork of the North Branch of the Chicago River. These are projects that are just getting going. Commissioner's colleagues actually just approved the department to initiate services to begin the engineering on that project. And we're anticipating those to actually advance into construction in about 2025. And another project I'd like to highlight, again, on that spirit of partnership, is one that we're doing in Northfield, and that is for the reconstruction of Hap Road. As we're traversing through a residential community and really into the heart of their downtown center, looking to see how we can improve safety, improve mobility, and actually bringing forth some innovation in our space. We call it a roundabout. So instead of looking at traffic signals, how can we bring in green infrastructure into our projects? How can we help reduce the project footprint while improving safety at the same time?
That all sounds great. Now, I know that Congress, in a bipartisan way, which is rare, approved the infrastructure law recently. Can you tell me what effect that might have on the residents of the 14th?
Well, for the residents of the 14th district and beyond, this is a really exciting time. This is something that, Nate and I and our team have really been preparing for the last, 5 to 10 years. When Cook County passed its long-range transportation plan, this is what we were setting up for. We were trying to advance engineering contracts, advance the planning studies that could get us ready and really properly position the county to receive some of these federal dollars. Some of the money from the Federal Infrastructure Act is coming to the state of Illinois, and it will make its way to us via a formula distribution, with much of those funds targeted towards bridge replacements. So there was a method to the madness as we were advancing these bridge removal and replacement projects, because those were some of the key types of projects where these funds could be applied. We also have been advancing projects at intersections, looking at those, as Nate mentioned, with bike and pedestrian infrastructure, so that we could ready ourselves for the application of these funds. Freight mobility is really a very big part of this federal infrastructure bill, with a lot of those monies coming up for competitive grants. And I'm very proud to say that Cook County has positioned itself to stand ready with our own projects. But again, going back to Invest in Cook, this was the day we were readying ourselves for. This is why we launched that program 6 years ago, to provide that money to advance projects through the pipeline, so that individual communities can apply for this funding and reach out to apply it to their reconstruction projects that help improve the state of good repair. Like I said earlier, we know the needs are great. We know the dollars are few, but really putting forth a strategic framework to understand how we can leverage the investment and take those infrastructure dollars as far as we can, really with a strong focus on on bridge infrastructure. It tends to be the most costly, and we really do rely heavily on state and, more importantly, federal dollars to improve the condition of our bridges.
We talked a little bit about this, but if you could just give us another kind of a quick run through of more immediate projects that you think are going to be most significant to the people in the 14th for now.
Absolutely. So we actually have several resurfacing projects. So speaking of state of good repair, what's going to come out and provide that immediate benefit? How do we advance projects that not make you have to call our 24-hour hotline because there might be a pothole or a drainage issue or something that just, it needs to be improved? Let's look at signals at a certain location, for instance. So we have 2 resurfacing contracts that are coming out this year. The first one is going to include resurfacing of several roadways within the 14th district. One of them is going to be along Quentin Road. We're actually doing a very long segment, about 2 miles from Northwest Highway all the way north to Lake Cook Road. So this is a maintenance project where we're really just giving it a fresh surface, riding surface, to eliminate, just the deteriorated pavement that you see on those sections. Similarly, resurfacing along Old Orchard Road between Skokie Boulevard and Grosse Point Road, along Roselle Road from Palatine to Baldwin. That contract was just awarded by the county board, and we'll be looking to initiate construction services as soon as we get a break from this weather that as we look out our window is upon us yet again. So we are thinking in the spring. The second contract that we have coming to the 14th district is one where the scope is a little bit more robust, a little greater than just a traditional maintenance resurfacing, and we call it pavement rehabilitation. So we're looking to do elements where we're replacing some of the curb, upgrading the sidewalk, upgrading some of the ADA ramps in that corridor where sidewalks exist, and installing new ones. And that work is going to occur along Central Road between New Wilkie Road and Arlington Heights, along Euclid Avenue between Roselle and Plum Grove Road, and then also another segment on Roselle Road between Euclid and Palatine. So those are some of the real near-term projects that we are going to be working on. And then we also have a traffic signal project that we're working on. I just lost my note here for my traffic signal project. Oh, here we go, at Lake Cook Road in Old Hicks, my apologies, that we're actually getting ready to move that project through. And that was a great project where we were able to leverage some of our local motor fuel tax funds that we receive when you fill up at the pump, which we know may be changing with the influx of innovation in electric vehicles, but really advancing projects that help improve safety and mobility for the communities within the 14th district.
Those all sound great. And so I'm going to ask you to look in your crystal ball a little bit, Sis, if you would, and just tell us what you think, this is a big one, the future of transportation for the next 10 to 20 years, because that's what we really have to anticipate as we start planning out how we're going to spend this money.
Yeah, no, Commissioner, that's a great question. And that's where I say a little foresight there. You're looking at, electric vehicles penetrating the market, looking at the federal infrastructure bill that we spoke of and the opportunities that it provides for, the installation of electric vehicle charging stations. We need to make sure that our network is ready, to accept electric vehicles, which we're ready, but providing those requisite stations along our corridors, that's something that we're looking at, at the department, something we're looking at with our regional partners, and opportunities that we have not only with the federal infrastructure bill, but Commissioner, as you had alluded earlier, looking for application of the American Rescue Plan dollars that are coming to Cook County. How can we help advance green infrastructure in all forms? That's something that we're going to be looking at. And as we spoke earlier about our transit plan, this is where, again, we want to, really advance green infrastructure and promote transit, promote rideshare, not always trying to, quote unquote, build our way out of congestion. As we look at the county's transportation program, the program that we're putting out here, that 5-year program, we have a $1.5 or $1.2 billion program for county government. We typically don't see the billions come up that frequently, but that's what we're looking to do. 70% of our program, we're really looking to see how we can modernize our facilities, just looking to make, our fleets more energy efficient as part of, the evolution of transportation. But what we really want to look at is, innovative strategies to advance projects that span jurisdictions. That's the future of transportation. It's no longer looking narrowly, down the lens of I'm just looking at what's under my jurisdiction. You are seeing increased collaboration across all agencies, within the district, within the state, and within our region for what we need to do to advance regional priority projects in addition to those that help promote state of good repair. And it's not just build. It's building smarter, and it's really invoking a strategy that helps get us leaner and greener, more efficient, and more importantly, we want to have a safer transportation network. You hear from many agencies talking about Vision Zero, and what that means is really want to drive towards a transportation network that has zero fatalities. That really is at the core of what we do. We're looking for equitable transportation solutions, dedicating additional resources in areas where they are needed. So it's not everybody gets a quarter. Some communities may get 50 cents, some might get a quarter, some might get, a nickel, but we're trying to leverage all of those resources, to really be ready for what the future is going to hold for us and really respect where we are today. And I think if we're making good, sound decisions with the state resources from the 2019 capital bill, where the county, this department did receive additional capital resources, which is allowing us to bring more of these more robust projects to the district, and making sure that we're really applying these federal dollars in a thoughtful, meaningful way, it's going to position us so that we have a thoughtful and inclusive transportation system in the next 5 to 10 years. Because as I had mentioned, our projects typically, they take a bit longer to come to fruition. So what we do here, what we do together in the next 5 to 7 years is really going to lay the groundwork for how successful we're going to be in the next 10 to 20.
And I think, since we've had this conversation, but between the capital bill and the federal monies that are coming in, this is not something we're going to have every time we're going to be talking. So these are once in a lifetime opportunities that we want to make sure we do right, and that also are going to be sustainable over the course of decades. And I think that's a big part of what your department is doing. And thank you for that. In addition to shattering a pretty significant glass ceiling, you've had a pretty varied career and very successful one. Can you just give the people in the town hall a little bit of an example of the projects that really stand out to you that you've worked on?
That's really a great question. I really appreciate you asking that. Something that we say frequently, around the office, say, it's not about the projects, it's about the people behind them. We know what a project is, but what does it do? Who does it serve? And how are we coming to the table with that listening ear so that we're bringing forth the projects that can really service the community and the region in the ways that we need to. I'm really excited and very passionate about projects that can help support local economy. How can we stimulate, how can we curate projects that have a meaning that go beyond the facility itself, going beyond transportation. That's part of our mission. And one of the projects, or some of the projects I had worked on, were some of the policy initiatives that I had spoken of earlier. So our long range transportation plan, not a list of projects that we're married to for the next 10 to 20 years and we can't pivot off of, but really higher level policy documents that help us identify how we can participate, how we can invest, and how we can move forth critical projects, whether they're on our system or not. And when we launched the Invest in Cook program, that was really one of the attractors for me for coming over from the private sector, into government. How can we ensure that local needs are being met? So I really take great pride in many of the local projects that we have put out, or coming up with creative solutions like we did on Hap Road, looking at the Lake Cook Road project that we spoke of. These were projects that I even, started working on in my career, before I even had come to the county, understanding we know what needs to be done. But as we look at every project, what should be done, and not look at, well, that's all the money we have, or that's where the projects need to end. That's how I really want to approach looking at every project, say, how can we make a lasting difference in the future, going above and beyond what we need to do, and really focusing in on the needs and delivering what we should. And if it's a couple extra nickels that it takes to get us to the finish line, that's the job for Nate and I, saying, well, we know what we need to deliver. We need to come up with a way to do it, because putting forth a project that's anything less than what the community needs is not a success.
That all sounds great. And again, congratulations on, a storied career that's only continuing, and we're very lucky to have you. I want to just make sure that you're aware of that. And I was very proud to vote in favor of your retention in your current position. But now we're going to talk a little bit about the nitty gritty, and I'm going to mention the Q word, which I know you're tired of me talking to you about, but maybe not. We have very productive conversations about Quentin Road, and we're going to continue to do those, I hope, for the next few years, if I'm lucky enough to be reelected. But I also just wanted to give people an idea. Obviously this resurfacing is, I think, essential from a safety standpoint. But can you just give me an overview of what you think the future holds and what our timing is going to be generally on Quentin? Because this is not the end of the story, it's just part of the story.
Yeah, no, thank you, Commissioner. We have had a number of conversations over the years for what we want to do with Quentin. And I think, my statement, and thank you again for that question, what has had an impact on my career? It really is making sure that we're being thoughtful about what the communities need. What is the purpose and intent of the project, not just the mechanics and the technical elements of that. And Quentin is honestly a prime example of that. So this project, as I had mentioned earlier, is going to be getting a minor facelift. We're going to come through with the resurfacing, but this is only being done as an interim improvement to address those poor pavement conditions. But the more comprehensive reconstruction project, is still on the horizon. With the onset of the pandemic, much like other areas of our economy, our industry, and our lives, some things have been put on hold. We had to hit the pause button on a couple things where the wind, was taken out of our sails. Quentin Road is a highly sensitive, environmentally sensitive project that the department was committed to, inclusive engagement on, that with constituents, that with advocacy groups, that with the local community, and also with our federal resource agencies. And this is something that takes a little bit of time to go through. And when the pandemic had landed upon us, it changed the way we lived. We're all connecting here on a screen. something we never would have done. We've recognized that many have the opportunity now to work from home, and their career trajectory, their business may have changed forever. And we knew that traffic was really a very big component of the Quentin Road assessment, and really a very integral part of many of the stakeholder engagement groups that we have been facilitating over the last number of years. In fairness to all of the hard work that the stakeholders and the county and the village and the forest preserve and our residents had provided, we wanted to make sure that we kept meaningful engagement. So we are getting ready to kind of move back through, and we're reinitiating all of the coordination with our federal resource agencies. We had to stop and, coordinate with our region's metropolitan planning organization. So they're really the regional traffic modeler, that, as we say, with traffic being really so integral to, the needs for what type of facility is needed on Quentin to accomplish needs for mobility and safety. How can we ensure that we're able to do that and deliver the pedestrian and bicycle facilities that also really came out as a highlight and a need, in addition to the access and egress from the subdivision just north of Deer Grove, layering on all of these complexities and sensitivities. We wanted to make sure that we were able to, come back to the table and have to do some of, update some of our analyses from where we were, to where we are, to make sure that we're moving forward in a very inclusive and transparent fashion. I'll be very honest, as eager as we were, it's like, okay, let's get back to business, right? As we started to see our region opening back up, let's go. But the nature of this project is such that we want to continue evaluating those alternatives for the long term with that robust stakeholder engagement. We're going to be coming back out and collecting additional information to what we call refresh some of the environmental studies that we need to perform to satisfy requirements for federal resource agencies. Again, the environmentally, or how sensitive this area is, we really need to look closely at a lot of the potential impacts that can come with the selection of an alternative. And we are going to be getting ready to start, moving through the data refresh of that project in hopes of coming back out for that robust public engagement that I hope many have seen and, quite honestly, had the opportunity to participate in. We had several starts and restarts on this project for longer than we want to know, for longer than my career at the county, where we talk about legacy projects. We do not want this to be the inevitable perpetual legacy, but we really recognize that there are key safety needs for the community. There are key mobility needs with the installation of the bike path. There are key mobility needs as we're looking at local mobility and that for the region that really need to be put back on the table and re-engage those that have helped us get to this point. It's been a long road. I know we don't have, too much more ahead of us, but what I can also understand is that patience can be running thin, saying, well, how much longer do we have to wait? Why are we coming out with an interim project? We are looking at the ultimate reconstruction of this roadway to meet all of the needs I spoke of, but that we are also paying very close attention to the bridge over Salt Creek. So that is also a critical part of this conversation that we're staying laserly focused on. But again, the thoughtful engagement that we've had and transparency in the evaluation of alternatives is what I really feel is going to bring this project to a successful conclusion. And advancing without having that, I think, would be a terrible detriment.
And Sis, the first official, quasi-official act of my tenure when I was just commissioner-elect was to go to a forum on Quentin Road. And so it has been certainly in the forefront of my consciousness and the meetings that I've had. I've been out there many times to talk to the folks who live nearby to Deer Grove. And I just want to make sure that everyone who's part of this town hall knows that when I said that, the time for talk is past and the time for action is now, I did mean that. Now, again, I regret the fact that it hasn't happened as quickly as I'd have liked. I do think that the pandemic was a big part of that. But I just want to assure everyone that, this resurfacing is not the end of the story. It's just part of what we're trying to do as a stopgap, and that these conversations will go on, and that the environmental studies will continue, and that I have committed to, as a budget matter, and we've talked about this, to make sure that the funding is going to be there when it's a time to get this project underway. And that, it needs to happen, and it needs to happen much sooner than it probably has transpired. I know it's been 20 years, I think, since it's been discussed. That's too long. And I take full responsibility for not being able to get things done as quickly as I would like. But I know Sis and I are committed, along with Nate, to getting this project done and to making sure that it's done right, because we only get one shot at this, and we're spending a lot of money, including the taxpayers' money, to get it done. So that's my commitment to everybody here and to the voters and residents of the 14th district. Next off, I actually have talked to a number of residents in unincorporated Northbrook about the sidewalk at Sanders from Mission Hills to Oak Street. Can you give me an update on that?
Yes, happy to do that. So this was actually a topic I remember at the public meeting, Commissioner, that you and I were both at when we were talking about Sanders Road, and this was identified as a need. This would be the sidewalk segment for Mission Hills. And while it was just outside of our Sanders Road project, we had committed as part of that meeting to explore opportunities, to complete that gap in the sidewalk, looking at opportunities that are coming with our bike plan, looking to advance pedestrian infrastructure, but that we're also working very closely with the township. I had mentioned earlier the Invest in Cook program, and that is really a great opportunity, for completing that gap in the sidewalk system. I'm actually meeting with the township highway supervisors tomorrow, making sure that they're fully aware of this. But this would be a fantastic opportunity for moving that forward, and we are also bringing it to their attention. And with its mention at the meeting and coordination through your office, it is something that is really at the forefront of our infrastructure plan.
That all sounds great, and I definitely think that would be a tremendous advantage to the folks who live in that area. I walk that area, and it really is a pretty glaring need for the folks in that section of Northbrook. So does Cook County, and I bet the answer to this is yes, properly document all projects with proper Illinois SWPPP requirements under the Illinois Environmental Protection Act, including weekly and rainfall inspections?
The answer is yes, yes, and yes. And for those, not as familiar with the alphabet soup that Nate and I deal with on a daily basis, I think when you're talking, transportation lingo, everything has an acronym. So as we go back and look at that, that is a stormwater pollution prevention plan. And we do that as part of a permit that we have to have for every one of our projects where there is a disruption of land. And that's called the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination Permit that we do file with each and every project. And as part of that stormwater pollution prevention plan, it's quite a tongue twister. We do have to go out there and do weekly inspections. We are looking at things like erosion control and what that would mean that, as areas are excavated, that we don't have inadvertent runoff or sedimentation of materials where things are moving, far out from the project. But that is a weekly inspection report that we call them resident engineers on our construction projects, are required to fill out. So the answer, yes, yes, and yes.
I was hoping, just in case anybody was watching from the government.
Yes.
So, there's a couple of exciting things going on in the 14th district kind of for the future. I don't know if you heard, but the Chicago Bears may be moving to Arlington Heights. And also Allstate just sold their headquarters, a very large piece of land, not too far from where I live. So does the county have any current plans for Euclid or Sanders that would relate to these potential projects?
Well, as I say, starting with Allstate first. So that was actually one of the reasons we, as we just spoke about the Mission Hills sidewalk, that was one of the reasons why we had really undertook improving the Sanders Road corridor. One, Allstate there, all of the employees coming in and out, and the degradation of that roadway over time. We are really pleased to be bringing that project to fruition, but that we're looking for opportunities. The one thing that we do know is, as we make transportation infrastructure investment, that really is the catalyst to spur economic growth. So while Allstate, may be moving out, we know that there's tremendous opportunity, for development in that area. And as it relates to the topic that I think we consistently hear on the news, are the Bears coming? Are the Bears going? What is it going to look like? What I can say is that as any development comes in, no matter what it is, if we're talking about the Bears, you're talking about Allstate, you're talking about, Amazon coming into the community, as these development ideas and concepts are put out there, there is tremendous coordination amongst all of the agencies in the area. When we kicked off our conversation here tonight, we, had spoken of the county's jurisdictional responsibility. One line on a map doesn't help provide mobility when we have major developments that may situate themselves, in the county and particularly in the district. So what I can say is that the county will be coming together with the state, and with the local municipalities to evaluate any potential impact for any development, those that you mentioned here or other. And
again, so the Arlington Racetrack is in incorporated Arlington Heights. Allstate is in unincorporated Cook County. So there are different jurisdictions and we have to coordinate all of that. But obviously, we're keeping a very close eye on what
Yes,
is
sir.
being done. And we'll do it in a way that makes sense for the residents and also for Cook County generally. And I think that's all the questions we had before. We still have about 6 minutes, so I'm going to go through a couple questions in the chat. First off, Kishore Desai says Cook County has done an admirable job of widening and redeveloping Lake Cook Road in Buffalo Grove. Job well done. We'll take all of the kudos we can get. I can tell you that I was parked there during construction a couple times, thinking, "Boy, this will be nice when this is done." Right, Seth?
Yes, absolutely. Soon enough, Commissioner, soon enough.
And next, Eric Wasowitz. It has been 25 years that we've been waiting to align Quentin Road with the north and south lanes. I sense the frustration because I hear it from people all the time. And the government in Palatine has been very clear on the need for this project and has reminded me of it in a way that I think is entirely appropriate. And the frustration is shared by your Cook County Commissioner. And I share by CIS as well. But we live in the real world and we have to make sure, again, that we do this in a timely manner based on the circumstances we live in, which has been COVID for the last 2 years, but also that we need to do everything we can to get this right because we're not going to get another shot at this. So, and CIS, correct me if I'm wrong, but all of these things need to be done in a deliberate manner. But I can tell you that it is not going to take another, well, I shouldn't say it's not going to take another 25 years, but it's not going to take a lengthy period of time for us to continue this process, and we will get it done. And that is my commitment as your Cook County Commissioner. And I think that that's what we're going to try and do as soon as we possibly can. Ami Rajpurkar says the environmental studies have been done at least 3 times every 25 years. Each one concluded expansion reduces congestion, traffic, increases safety, and minimal environmental impact. Let me just share that environmental studies done over 25 years and environmental studies done now with the changes in the way we do transportation don't necessarily relate to each other. So, but Sis, you're the expert, so can you respond to the environmental studies issue?
No, absolutely. And Amy, thank you very much for that question. So that's where, as we're looking at, as I mentioned, we had several starts and restarts. And about 6 years, and we actually had a complete do-over. Let's start from scratch and let's move this forward to make sure we had that thoughtful inclusion. But when it comes to the environmental resource agencies, there are strict requirements that we have to adhere to. When I spoke of the refreshing, we need to look at impacts to trees, to wetlands. We're looking at traffic impacts. We're looking at safety impacts. So we can't rest on the laurels of what things were when we've done the analyses a few years back. They do need to be, I don't want to say continually refreshed, but as you hit major milestones in the project and we're seeking concurrence or approval from federal resource agencies that are looking at the impacts. And more importantly, it's not just that they're looking at the impacts, they're ensuring that the analyses that the agencies are performing, that we're very considerate of what the current land use and context is, what type of public engagement we've done, and making sure that we're not just, mitigating for impacts, but we are truly minimizing the impacts. So that's where they do require the refresh of those analyses. And that is what we are embarking on here now, having, gotten resolved from the Metropolitan Planning Organization on traffic volumes, again, because that was really, a key component to the discussion of, what cross section, meaning how many lanes is it that we need to have. And once we got that point, we could begin refreshing things through to meet current standards and requirements. And they also have very structured times that they meet. Unfortunately, Nate and I can't call them up and say, hey, we've got something here. Are you ready to meet? They meet on a structured cadence and we kind of have to adhere to that. So we are looking very closely at their schedules and the milestones that need to be achieved so that we can represent alternatives, to them, and more importantly, make sure that we're able to get back out and hold those additional stakeholder meetings so that we can complete those requirements as part of the environmental analysis. Absolutely.
And for Amy's question, and Sis, and thank you. Some of this you can put on me because because of the nature of the forest preserve being contiguous with Quentin Road. This is one again that I am insisting on we get right. This is again there has to be an appreciation for the structure, the number of lanes, and the impact on flora and fauna within the forest preserve, and that's important to me. And the one thing that I'm trying to focus on as we continue this process, and that's why I think we need again to get this right, and that's one reason these things are happening again. Tom Robb from the Journal asks, how will Allstate, how will you coordinate Allstate with area municipalities like Glenview? Just so happens that I know a lot of people in the village of Glenview, strangely enough, and it may not surprise Rob, but I've already had multiple conversations with the folks in Glenview because this is an unincorporated Cook County, so it's my jurisdiction initially. And there's also going to be questions of annexation and then access, roadways, infrastructure, all those things. I can tell you that I will coordinate with all of the stakeholders, which includes Northbrook, Prospect Heights, and Glenview, and make sure that everything is done both from an environmental, from a sustainability, and from a traffic standpoint. We're going to do all those things, and obviously CIS will be a big part of that as well. But I can guarantee you those conversations have already started, and they're going to continue. And then Kishore then gets, I think this is our last question. He agrees with you, Sis, that we have to do this right when it comes to expanding Quentin, rather than rushing to match this section with the north and south. And again, thank you for that. That's exactly what we're trying to do. And again, it has taken longer than I would like, but I have been in office for 3 years. Again, I'd like to be around to see this completed. I plan to be, and that is my commitment to the people of the 14th district. So let's make sure that we get it right and that we continue the conversations. And again, I am more than willing to, I'm actually going to be at a Palatine Village Council meeting in early March, because I'm more than happy to talk about the things we have planned, both short-term and long-term, and how we're going to try and get this done in a timely manner. And I think that then takes us to 7:30. I just want to say thank you to everybody who has been a part of this town hall. It's really exciting for me to be a part of the work that we do, both from transportation and highways, and then every other aspect of Cook County government, which again is often described as a stealth government. People don't really know what we do. We do a lot of cool stuff, and transportation and highways, because I have a purely suburban district, is a big part of what we try to do. And I just want to say thank you for everybody who has weighed in. By the way, we do listen to these issues. We do respond to them as best we can. And then whatever else we can do, if you have other projects or other issues, please let me know, and we will do everything we can to respond. This is on the screen is my contact information. Obviously, anything we can do through my office, through Julie, Liz, or Barb, we will do that. And again, I want to thank again Sis and Nate for being a part of this project. And again, if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us. We'll try to get you answers in a timely way. So thanks for your hour. I appreciate it. Thanks to all of our panelists, and we'll see you next time. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.